Can you believe it if someone says that the next global crisis won't start with a bomb? It will start with silence, no explosions, no breaking news sirens, just ships that stop moving. Now imagine this. Two narrow waterways, invisible on most maps, suddenly begin to fail. One is the energy valve of the world. The other is the trade gate of the Red Sea. They're not just waterways, they're choke points. The Strait of Hormuz and Bab el Mandeb. And both are under threat at the same time. If both fail together, the shock does not stay in the Middle East. It moves into oil markets, shipping lanes, inflation, food prices, and even the cost of everyday life. That is not a theory. That is the warning now sitting inside recent reports, i.e. analysis, IMF forecasts, and UN trade data. It is believed that power isn't about size, it's about location. And right now, the most powerful places on Earth are not countries. Hormuz traffic has already fallen from roughly 125 to 140 ships a day before the war to just 7 in a day, while recent reporting showed the strait remained largely at a standstill even after a U.S. pledge to secure shipping. That is not a warning sign. That is the warning already happening. So here's the question. What happens when the world loses both its energy valve and its trade gateway at the same time? Now zoom in on Hormuz, where the pressure built first. According to the International Energy Agency, nearly 20 million barrels of oil per day moved through Hormuz in 2025. But here's the part most people miss. There is no real backup. The IEA says alternative routes can only handle about 3.5 to 5.5 million barrels per day. That means if Hormuz collapses, the world doesn't reroute, it loses supply. And this isn't hypothetical anymore. During the recent Iran-linked escalation, flows through Hormuz dropped from around 20 million barrels per day to just over 2 million. Think about that. That's not a dip, that's a system shock. Because Hormuz matters more than a headline. It is the nerve center of the energy market. When it tightens, oil does not just get more expensive, it becomes a chain reaction. It is reported that Saudi Aramco warned of catastrophic consequences if the strait stays blocked, while the IMF said the war in the Middle East is already disrupting the global economy through higher commodity prices, firmer inflation expectations, and tighter financial conditions. And markets reacted exactly how you'd expect. Oil prices surged past $120 per barrel. Energy traders panicked. Governments began contingency planning. But here's where it gets deeper. Oil is not just fuel. It is transport, food, fertilizer, manufacturing, plastics, everything. So when Hormuz tightens, the shock doesn't stay in oil markets. It spreads to fuel, to transport, to food, to inflation, to economy. That's vertical collapse. If Hormuz controls supply, Bab el Mandeb controls time. And in global trade, time is everything. This narrow passage connects the Red Sea to the global ocean, a critical link between Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. But here's what's happening right now. Shipping companies like Maersk, Hapag-Lloyd, and CMA CGM have already started rerouting vessels around Africa, away from the Suez Canal and Bab el Mandeb, after U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran and the closure of Hormuz. It is also reported that the Iran-backed Houthi movement in Yemen has carried out repeated drone and missile attacks on Israel-linked targets and international shipping in the Red Sea since late 2023, significantly disrupting maritime traffic through the region. They have also threatened further escalation, including the possibility of restricting or targeting shipping routes near the Bab el Mandeb Strait. These attacks have triggered sustained US and UK-led military responses aimed at protecting commercial shipping and restoring maritime security in the Red Sea corridor. That means Bab el Mandeb is no longer just a choke point, it's a pressure point. And when ships avoid it, they don't stop. They detour around Africa. And once shippers reroute, the costs spread fast. And going around Africa adds 10 to 14 days for vessels heading toward North Africa, burning more fuel, increasing costs, delaying cargo. According to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, over 80% of global trade moves by sea. So when time breaks, everything slows. Factories wait, ports clog, prices rise. That's horizontal collapse. So what happens if both collapse at once? This is where the logic becomes frighteningly simple. Hormuz cuts supply. Bab el Mandeb slows movement. Together, they attack both availability and velocity. i.e., show the first half clearly. Hormuz handles around 1/5 of global oil and LNG flows, while the Red Sea corridor is already strained by rerouting and security threats. If both are lost, the world is no longer dealing with a regional war premium. It is dealing with a global logistics shock. That shock would move vertically through the economy. Energy costs rise first, shipping becomes expensive, trade becomes unpredictable, import prices rise, then inflation becomes sticky, then central banks are forced into tougher choices. The World Bank expects energy prices to rise sharply in 2026 if the conflict persists, while the IMF's April 2026 outlook says the war is already testing global resilience. The IMF still projects 3.1% global growth in 2026, but that is under assumptions of a limited conflict. The deeper the disruption, the weaker the growth picture becomes. Now imagine both choke points failing together. This isn't just disruption, it's a global stress test. Here's the part most people underestimate. Choke points don't need to be closed to cause damage. They just need to become uncertain. Because markets don't wait for confirmation, they react to fear, and fear is already here. Even the massive military presence in the Red Sea has failed to fully secure shipping lanes, while noting that Hormuz is even harder to protect because Iran's danger zone is larger and its military is more capable than the Houthis. That tells you something critical. This isn't a problem you can easily fix with force, because geography doesn't fight battles, it creates pressure. Hence, a narrow strait can do what armies cannot. And this is why choke points matter more than armies in some moments. An army can win a battle. A choke point can tax the whole planet. A single waterway can delay cargo, raise insurance, weaken supply chains, and trigger price shocks without taking a single capital city. That's why choke points matter more than size. They are levers on the global system. And that is the strategic lesson here. Geography does not need to defeat the world by force. It only needs to make the world more expensive to move. So, what does this actually mean for people? It means fuel becomes more expensive, food prices rise, deliveries slow down, economies weaken. And when growth slows while prices rise, that's the worst combination. And that hits hardest in countries that rely on imports, which means this crisis doesn't stay in the Middle East, it travels. So the real nightmare is not just that Hormuz and Bab el Mandeb are dangerous, it is that the modern world is built to depend on them. Energy, trade, inflation, food, and finance all lean on the assumption that these sea lanes remain open. Once that assumption breaks, the shock does not stay offshore. It lands on fuel tanks, supermarket shelves, airline prices, factory output, and government budgets. Power isn't about size, it's about location is not a slogan here. It is the whole story.
It's time for Fact Say Confidence Score.
So what happens if both choke points collapse at once? The answer isn't dramatic, it's structural. The world doesn't stop, it struggles. Energy tightens, trade slows, costs rise, and uncertainty spreads faster than any ship ever could. Because in today's world, the most powerful weapon isn't always military. Sometimes it's a narrow stretch of water. If you understand the scale of this, subscribe, because the next global crisis may not begin with a missile. It may begin with a route that simply stops moving.